Right, thanks so much for joining me on this, and welcome along. This is I'm really excited to get this up and running. It's the first one that I wanted to get up and share with you. And so I'm going to be going at a bit of a pace because I want to get this all into 20 minutes. I know that your time is valuable, and that I want to squeeze every last bit of juice of value in this with you. So I hope you've got a bit of pen and a paper and an open mind, and we'll get going into it. I mean, this first of all, is a bit of an introduction. This Resilient Under Fire forms part of a 3-part series that I've got that is really focused on developing us as individuals within the industry. There's 3 core pillars that I see that we need for more successful projects and one of them is self-mastery, and that's what this is about. The other 2 is how we're interacting with stakeholders, and another one is how we're interacting with teams, and we'll move through those as we move through the weeks. So this one here is all about being resilient under fire. So we'll take you through why we need this, and what is it that about what we need to bring to our projects in order to make this effective. And the other thing that we need is that we're going to talk to today is how you can implement this on your project straight away. And then right at the end, we'll talk about where you can go to if you need more help. So in our industry, as we all know, I've been in this for nearly 30 years, and it's a high pressure, high stakes environment that we work in. A lot of our decisions, the things that we do, if we don't get them right, they end up with some real consequences, and because of this, costly consequences in time and budget and in the quality of the work that we're doing, the projects that we're working on. So really, we've got a lot of eyeballs on us. We're under a lot of scrutiny. We've got our stakeholders that are keeping an eye on us. We've got our clients. We've got our superiors, and we've also got the people within our teams. I want to make sure that that we're working at the most productive level that we can. Is all of this making sense so far? All right, good. So now I want to get into why it's so important for us to develop the skills in being resilient under pressure. So I'm going to talk through some of the harsh realities, the harsh truths of what many of us in our industry, so many of us are really experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So as I said earlier, it's a high-stakes situation. We've got a lot of people with their eyes on us, watching how we are performing. And they're going to be questioning things. If they don't understand what we're doing or why we're doing it the way that we're doing it, then they're very likely going to be frustrated. They're going to be experiencing their own emotions, and they're going to be wanting to confront us. And this can happen anywhere, from anyone, at any time. And another reason why it's so important is because, so many of us are consciously very self-conscious about people's eyeballs on us. And so we're going into like a real sense of anxiety about what we've done in the past, where we're going to end up in the future, which is a real, stress on us in our day-to-day work. And of course, that negatively impacts on our performance. And then, when we get into these high-stakes situations where we might have one of these or other people approaching us with their frustrations, we all react in different ways. And I would argue that just as being responding or reacting in rage or aggression is inappropriate and not productive, equally unproductive is being passive in those situations. But they all have their consequences, and that's what we're here to understand. And of course, at the end of it all, over the long term, we're going to lose control not only of ourselves, we're going to lose control not only of our projects, but within all of that, our relationships with other people, critical people, our dependencies on our projects and our stakeholders, our teammates, and our clients, they're going to deteriorate, and we're going to lose track of, we're not going to have that control that we really need as engineers and project managers. But there is a way, and this is what we need in order to be more effective. When we get this right, because when we do get this right, you've got this innate, when you've got the skills and the abilities in these situations, you can come into those feeling fully competent in your own abilities, and you'll be in a prepared state. You'll know exactly what to do when the blood rushes to your head. And the other reason why it's so important to be effective in these situations is because it's important for us to stay calm, be alert, and engage in this in an articulate and productive way, keeping your eye focused on the outcomes, not in the moment. And another reason why it's so important is because when you do get this right, then you're able to set the tone in a difficult situation, lead the interaction so that it's not, tearing off here and there and, with everybody throwing their pennies worth in. And we're able to get back to productive, meaningful engagement where we can, lead the way, lead the tune to get the outcomes that we want. And of course, over the long term, we've got all of these skills now down pat, and we've practicing them in the projects that we're working on. We can be deliberate about this. We can be aware of these interactions happening all around us. And when we're part of it, we can make the difference and make sure that we're efficient in these engagements, and we can continue to keep our projects on track and on target. Now, I'm going to quickly run through these 5 key principles for you, because these are going to tell you what it is you need to be effective in these situations on your projects. All right, here we go. Let's get into this. Now, Roger Fisher, he's a Harvard professor and an expert in conflict management. Spent most of his life studying this. And he demonstrates that there is a clear and proven link to stressed leaders and conflict on projects. Does that, that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, that's logical. People who are in a very, very reactive state when they're under stress, they're at the ends of their nerves. So if you're going to come in with something that's left field, it's, there's very few people who are really able to put that sort of emotions aside and know clearly and logically the steps that they need to go through to engage effectively. But that's what happened. But what happens on our projects in our culture is that so many people really are boasting about just how much work they've got on, how much stress they've got. And I've had so many conversations, corridor conversations, where people are wearing this, being pushed to the ends of their limits and their nerves, and wearing it like a badge of honor. So there are so many people out there in our projects, whether they want to be or not, they are stressed. And this is something that you must be aware of, and when this is happening in an environment where disputes and disagreements and misunderstandings and frustrations all come into the same mix, you need to be able to separate those or recognize that there are people, including yourself, who have a high level of stress, and they're going to be more reactive or passive depending on their kind of personalities. So stress kills performance and it kills relationships. So look after yourself and check in every now and again to make sure you understand what levels of stress that you're at. Because it's a lot like you've got to look after the tires and maintain the car, because when you need the car and the tires to perform at their best, you want to make sure that you're not going to skid off the road because you don't have the traction. And the second key principle here is to say that conflict is inevitable. HKA have done an international research study and, with their clients, thousands of projects across the world. And what they're saying is the statistics are that 56% of projects are 56% of the total cost of projects at their initial cost estimation is in dispute. 56% of that project cost is in dispute. Conflict escalates disputes. Now, they always progress upwards through the chain of the hierarchy in the project. Start off with a conflict down here, and it progresses all the way up. And the actual the cost of it, the more time that we spend on conflicts and these disputes, the cost that we're losing for our organizations in our own lost productivity and time that's spent focused on this, well, the average across the industry is 2.6% of the project cost is spent in dealing with the disputes. And that's just at the higher level. What about all of that festering and problems that we've been disagreeing over? Conflict is part and parcel of our projects. It's going to happen. It's always going to be there. We are human beings after all. So the point of this is to accept that conflict is part and parcel. And so why wouldn't you want to set yourself apart from everybody else, where most people are just responding to the best of their ability without knowing the key skills that you need to be competent in those high-stakes scenarios? Step yourself apart from everybody else and become someone of substance so that you can transform the situation and drag it out from the toilet. So it's a lot like, if you don't have these tools and skills, it's a lot like playing with paper, scissors, and rock. It's down to chance. Now, the next key principle is that this is human nature, that when we're in a confrontation, the automatic reaction, unless you're supremely experienced in this or you've developed and built the skills, for yourselves, is that you're going to check in with yourself to see how much of this is a threat situation. Do I really need to go on the defensive, or should I go on the offensive? Or are we just in a safe, neutral space here that we can work effectively together? But the latter is the objective in all of this. So we are triggered into a fight, flight, or freeze situation. And there's this study by Folger and Charlicki back in 2005 who's saying that how we react in significant high-stakes situations will directly impact the outcome of that situation, of that engagement, that interaction. I mean, that makes sense. That's really seems to make sense. So we've got to be conscious of how we react has real, tangible repercussions. Well, they can affect the morale of the team that you're working in. I mean, even if it's on an individual basis, that individual will go out and spread just how poorly that encounter went. It's critical to the success of our projects fundamentally from every level. With our teams, as I just suggested, it's going to affect morale. With our relationships with stakeholders, you're either going to, they're going to go get offside if you're not going to get this right, because, that's just the way it is. You're trying to build and develop a relationship. So the consequences begin with individuals, but they escalate in terms of how you're interacting with one another. And then those sorts of problems, when they're not resolved or nipped in the bud straight away, then they're going to keep going up the chain. More and more people are going to be getting involved. More and more cost is going to be wasted. More and more decisions are going to have to be made. And it just spirals out of control. So how you react, you've got, just pause in the moment. There's a realization right here I want you to get. That is, when you're triggered, and after you've been triggered and before you react, there is a moment there. Now, your key is to hold that moment and stretch it for as long as you need before you know exactly the right way in how to respond in that engagement. So make it a smart choice. Now, the next key principle here is that most people, I would argue, wake up in the morning with the best of intentions at heart. They want to do the best that they can for themselves, for their teammates, for their stakeholders, for the project, for their clients. Now, there's a book from Berger and Luckman. They wrote this book called The Social Construction of Reality. It's worthwhile having a dive into that one. And what they're saying is that people create their own reality based on their own individual experiences. And again, I mean, that's logical, makes sense. Each of us have our own qualities, and that's the beauty of diversity as well. We bring our own experiences, our own life into a project, but what comes with that is a difference in perspective and a difference in how we respond and how we react. So it's a cocktail of all of these different perceptions, pressures, and expectations. No wonder there's so much conflict on our projects. But the key is for us as individuals to step out, know how to deal with these situations in the moment so that we can maintain or sustain great working, productive relationships, which is always going to be a better outcome. I mean, the norm in our projects is that, again, we're all stressed. We're rushing from here to there. You know, the concrete truck is going to be pulling up any minute now. We've got to get the last bit of reinforcement done. It's always a lot going on, complex, stressful. A lot of people with their own interests have got a lot at stake by how you perform. So when they do confront you, when they do approach you with whatever approach that they do take, you could be quick to assume that they're being aggressive or that they're being unfair. But just imagine yourself. We spoke in the previous key principle about stretching that moment between when you're triggered and when you react. Be curious also. Just imagine. Try to want to understand what's going on behind this individual rather than looking at, how you can protect yourself. I think it's more productive to get behind the veil, get behind the facade, go beyond the superficial. So it's like transforming a lion where you're stricken by so much anxiety and fear and those sorts of negative emotions, when really you've got the power to acknowledge those, interact with this other person, find out what's going on behind the facade, and then you'll see the results in that this person will gently relax back and become more of a lamb rather than a lion. And finally, the fifth core principle to this is that it's all about I want to refer back to William Ury. William Ury is an anthropologist. He's a negotiation expert, and he's a real hero of mine. And I highly recommend that you get into his book, The Third Side. It's called The Third Side: Why We Fight and How We Can Stop. It's fantastic. Now, what he says in there, one of the gold nuggets that I pulled out of that book is that he's saying that we don't need to get mad in these situations. We don't need to get even either. Retaliation, we don't need any of that. But what we can do is we can develop the skills, the tools, the techniques, the understanding to get what you want from that encounter, because you can change your perspective in these high stakes situations. They are opportunities. They are opportunities. Because our biggest mistake is initially to allow our emotions to run away from us, and they dictate how we respond and react and engage in this situation. But we need to be smarter about it. So what happens in the norm of projects is that, we're a lot like kids in the playground. No, I'm right, you're wrong. This is mine, that's yours, those sorts of arguments. But we need to get beyond all of that. Because by approaching conflict with conflict, we are really reinforcing adversary with adversary. So what you need to do really is you want to forget about being right, forget about, in the moment defending or protecting yourself. Get beyond that, as we spoke about earlier, and use this as an opportunity to engage and understand the other person, because that's where the fuel and the information that you can use to your advantage comes from. It's a lot like, rolling in the judo, you're using their energy to defend yourself effectively, using their energy to defend yourself. And then, of course, at the end of it, you finish with a respectful bow. Because it's all about sustaining relationships. Now, I want to quickly I know we haven't got very long, but I want to talk to you now about how you can be more resilient under fire. And our clients in the program, in the implementation program of this, we show them this in great detail. We draw out the steps that are involved in this. And there are 4 steps. The first step is to compose yourself. To first look after yourself and acknowledge where you're at emotionally. And then the second step that you would undertake, because you're the leader in all of this, is to diffuse the situation so that you're able to operate by easing the tension in the air. And then you want to put on that curious mind to discover what's going on behind the facade of the other person. You want to look behind the curtain. And then we give you the techniques, the tools to resolve the situation and create a mutually inclusive participation. Because at the end of the day, we want this person who started off as your, adversary, who's then working with you to resolve the fundamental issues that's getting up their nose in the first place. So where to next? So what we've talked about, why we need to be resilient on projects and the consequences that we have within our relationships and the way that the projects are rolled out and how much loss there is on them if we don't get it right. And we talked to you about why we need to develop these skills and techniques and mindsets too. And we've gone through the 5 key principles of what we need to be effective on projects in these situations. And I've given you a bit of an oversight on how you can actually do it. So where to next? So there's a few things I want to just quickly touch on, is that if you want to know more and you're interested in a group session where we can get together with a group of people to talk through, how well you've been going in implementing some of this during the week, or if you want to talk about where you're stuck and where you need a bit of a hand, we can talk about that too. So we're there to learn from one another and celebrate together. And if you're interested in that, then email me on that email address right there in the bottom left-hand corner. If you're interested in a one-to-one conversation to flesh this out a little bit more, then again, give me an email and just put in the title that you want, something more private. How else can I help you? Well, I'm going to be doing more of these sessions once a week. I've got 9 modules that I want to share with you. And so we've also got, connect with me on LinkedIn. Every week I'm delivering an article. And I think that's about it for now. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some value out of it. But most importantly, implement some of this in your projects today. And that's it. All the best, and I'll see you next time. See ya.